It is the 18th of the 1st 25, the time 22 minutes past 10, and we will today speak about some F1 news, updates, etc., etc. For there are very many F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. We'll talk Toto, the boy who cried wolf, and his sim racing son, the skills and tools that he feels like he is leveraging, and whether we are about to embark on a brand new F1 era where all the drivers who win have been sim racers before. So too we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton and the paparazzi furore around him, and he's joining Scuderia Ferrari as at 2025. This week upcoming will be his first days at his new home, Milan, Scuderia Ferrari. The red overalls with the black prancing horse atop. So too we'll talk about Helmut Marko saying that one driver in particular, not named Checo Perez, was his biggest mistake that he's ever made. So too we'll talk about Arvid Lindblad. So too we'll talk about a driver saying that one Alex Albon is overrated and will get exposed by one driver in 2025. So too we'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen and his exit clause and what that could mean for expediting his path through to the green machine. That is of course Aston Martin. Go on, let's talk about Will Buxton first. Excuse me, I'm bunged up still. I don't know what my problem is. Kayla, Benzie, Dutchy, Joe, Technical G, you guys are legends. Listen, let me talk about Will Buxton first, because again, we know that dude is going across the IndyCar, and I like myself a bit of Will Buxton, as controversial as that dude is in the F1 community. You know, all his phrases, Netflix Drive to Survive. If you qualifying first, that means that you will start in pole position. I think sometimes we need a little bit of that, right? Cadence, something a little bit different. Everything can't be vanilla and plain and like we've always seen in F1 history. And Will Buxton did a little bit different. And I don't hate that. But of late, I feel like Will Buxton's been off the mark. Maybe this is me being a bit naive and misunderstanding Will Buxton's predictions for what they are. You'll recall that at some point towards the latter stages of the season last year, Will Buxton said this of Lando Norris: I don't think Lando Norris can win. I think he will win. Oh, the humanity. How did that work out for you, Will Buxton? Upon what basis and foundation did you make that prediction? But maybe that's me being noddy again and misreading the room, because we know Will Buxton is here to create and cause controversy. Why? Because by dint of that, more eyes are on the F1, the sporting endeavour that is the one that F's. Of course it is. We know that's the formula. So maybe I've bought the Will Buxton sell. Has he sold me a dummy? Chat. Did he really believe that Lando Norris is going to win? But I'm taking him at his word, because he's always been honest and earnest. Now joining IndyCar commentary team NBC Sports Settings, or Fox Sports Settings even, Will Buxton has said this in an exchange with Jeff Smith on Twitter. So glad to have you, mate. IndyCar commentary team. Still trying to understand why you are coming stateside instead of staying with F1, but maybe you will do both. James Hinchcliffe kind of does. Will Buxton's response on Twitter was thus: because IndyCar has the greatest racing on earth. Oh, the humanity. Safak, you're a legend. Oh, the humanity. What is he talking about? Maybe, listen, okay, let me be honest. Honest and open. I can't compare these two things because I've very rarely watched IndyCar. But you guys tell me in the chat, is the best racing on earth in IndyCar, or is it Formula One? I just presumed that the best racing on earth was Formula One. But racing is the pertinent word there, is it not? Because F1 does, I mean, for a couple of years there, 2023, 2022, was F1 the best racing series in the world? If indeed there was, as near as makes no difference, no racing. It's a very peculiar way of terming it, right? Not the best series, not the best motorsports formula in the world. The upper echelons of that has always been Formula One. But as far as racing, if that's what you're invested in, then I don't know, could you argue that MotoGP is? How do you even grade that? What's the benchmark, the critical success factor? Overtake, surely. number of overtakes per race. Well, then that's MotoGP every single time, is it not? Or are we talking about quality of overtakes? This is friend of the channel, Peter D. Windsor's first and foremost thesis, right? This is the mountain upon which he's prepared to die, because all overtakes are created equal, but some are created more equally than others. Is a DRS move the same as, let's say, a Mika Hakkinen on a Michael Schumacher and Zonta back in the day at Spa, Eau Rouge settings? Are those two things the same? Is a DRS move the same? Does it carry the same equivalent value as a non-DRS overtake? Therein lies the question. How are we judging this? The best racing? IndyCar has it, says Will Buxton, but I think this is a conversation that will rage on. Joanna Benzi. It is techie, isn't it? F1 period, then rally, then the Isle of Man, says Technical G. But how can rally have the best racing? Isn't rally in a time trial? I don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions, but Will Buxton's raised it, so I thought it'd be a valid discussion. One of many discussions that I'm sure we'll continue having as the story arc around Formula One's racing, or lack thereof, continues to rage as we go into 2026. Brand new rules and regs that no one in the F1 community is crying for, which will set F1 back another 5-10 years, right? Because one team or two will inevitably take a leap on the rest, and then what happens then? Everybody dials off. Wake me up when racing comes back in the final phase of this rule and reg set, just as it has been for the past 5 years. 2021, brilliant season, gangbusters, one of the best that I've ever seen. That much is for sure. And what did they do the year afterwards? Change the regs. And now we're just finding our feet again. F1 has just become blockbuster again. And what are they going to go and do again in 2026? Change the rules again in the name of sustainability. I cannot with Formula One. Oh, and by the way, remember we talked about the furore of press and media. The paparazzi will be baying for the blood of anything Scuderia Ferrari, because they'll be selling these pictures and stories for hundreds of thousands. Lewis Hamilton has been snapped going through the airport, about to embark upon his first week as a Ferrari driver. Proper the humanity. Lewis Hamilton, pictures of him going through the airport with his luggage. What are we doing here? This is bonkers. The levels, unprecedented. I've said it before, but it's going to ramp up. I'm telling you, I think I'm even understating it. Paparazzi, press, media will be going crazy. I only hope, under the umbrella term of Lewis Hamilton's unprecedented 8th World Drivers' Championship, that he and they can get out the blocks really quickly, because momentum is a true thing in Formula One, especially when you're racing not for Ferrari but for Italy's team. Rob Smedley has told us, race engineer to some of the goatiest ones, Felipe Massa, Michael Schumacher, I think back in the day. Rob Smedley has told us on a gazillion occasions that when you're winning with Ferrari, it's one thing, you'll never have to pay for a meal in Italy. You're part of the family. It's one of those Godfather settings. Michael Corleone, you understand where I'm going with this. But when you are losing, and your tenure of losing, success and or lack thereof, that they will spit at you in the streets. I don't want for that for Sir Lewis, nor do I want that for Charles Leclerc. Hence why I am praying to all things holy and sanctity. I'm praying to the F1 gods that he can get out the gate quick. There is a race to Monaco. If indeed we're talking about hierarchy, who will Scuderia Ferrari and Fred Vasseur defer to? Well, that will depend who can get to Monaco first. Ergo, which of Charles Leclerc or Sir Lewis Hamilton will be ahead in the drivers' standings come the end of the Monaco Grand Prix. It's going to get techie. Oh, and by the way, Helmut Marko said that his biggest mistake in F1, as far as his decision to appoint and or fire drivers, was Nick De Vries. Now, for context, you know that there was a back and forth between Helmut Marko, Dr. Helmut Marko of Red Bull GmbH, Red Bull driver consultant, man who owns and runs and holds the red pennant on all things Red Bull Junior program, that he fancied Nick De Vries, that he thought it was about time that that dude got his opportunity in a Red Bull car, Red Bull Racing car, appointed him, notwithstanding Christian Horner's doubt. Principal point of contention: was Nick de Vries really that quick? What was his Magna Carta? Like, what's the one drive that you can say about Nick de Vries that makes him a Formula One driver, a potential future great? Yeah, he won Formula E, but what's that? What's that got to do with the price of bread as far as becoming an F1 World Championship? A completely different series, a completely different set of skills required. That was Christian Horner's principal point of contention. And he, by dint of Nick de Vries's failure, the quickness of it, the immediacy of it, Christian Horner was proved right in this circumstance. Parlay this now on to Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. I think, though, they were both broadly aligned, although Helmut Marko, depending on which reports and sources you pay attention to, if word on the F1 curb is something in which you can be invested, Helmut Marko fancied himself some Yuki Tsunoda. Of the key stakeholders and shareholders and decision makers at Red Bull, when Yuki Tsunoda was doing his post-Abu Dhabi Grand Prix test, as implored by Honda, the team that sponsor Yuki Tsunoda, there was one man that hung around to watch Yuki Tsunoda in real time. Whatever you want to say about Helmut Marko and some of his xenophobic comments in the past, he was the one who stood around and waited and watched Yuki Tsunoda in that test. It was not Christian Horner, nor was it Pierre Vacher. The two of those bods jumped on the private jet and were home as fast as you can. There was a man that hung around, and his name was Dr. Helmut Marko. So I will not stand for any hatred or criticism of that dude, because he is a racing mind. Do you want me to? Let me tell you something about this. If you guys check the history, so I know Helmut Marko comes in for a doctor. Put some respect on his name, Cameron. I know Dr. Helmut Marko comes in for a lot of criticism. But if you hear the stories about how good that dude was as a driver, do you know that this fella, he had a big accident, and I think it ultimately altered his vision on one eye. That's why you can see one of his eyes look like that. But this dude, prior to his big life-altering serious injury accident, word on the F1 curb is that he had a contract in his briefcase with Scuderia Ferrari. As soon as he had that accident, the dude that took his drive with the red team had a name, and his name was Niki Lauda. Hence why the two of them had that friendship and rivalry going back and forth. Helmut Marko would have always seen himself as better than Niki Lauda because he would have got the Ferrari drive but for his incident. But I digress. That's a story that I've been looking to get off my chest for the longest time. Madeline, everybody's getting back in now as we're approaching. You see, F1's doing one of these as we're getting to the meaty end of the off season. Oh, the humanity. IndyCar, that's what they call football in the US, while it's 98%. Oh, bloody no. Just hope Leclerc performs well. Felipe, me and you both. I wish the best for Scuderia Ferrari, because it's going to get techie. Lest we forget that team principals don't tend to hang around long in Ferrari, at Ferrari, unless they bring in silverware. 3 years, 4 years. If memory serves, isn't this? This is Frederick Vasseurs' third or fourth year, is it not? I think he's in the danger zone, the carbon fibre zone, as far as sackings. I'm telling you, this is his final gambit. It's going to get techier than techie things. At this point in their career, Charles is just the better driver, says Madeline. No. Are we going to talk about this? Is Charles... Oh, go on then, I'll take you at your words, Madeline, because you framed it this way. Is Charles a better driver than Lewis Hamilton at 40 years old, as at the 18th of the 1st 2025? Oh wait, non-rhetorical question. And Madeline, I'm pitching this at you. Is Charles a better driver, quicker? We can go along with that. I don't even think that's controversial. Yeah, of course he is. Point A to B, point to point. Charles Leclerc, one of the quickest, if not the quickest on the grid. Like I can live with that. A better driver though. Hold your horses, Madeline. I'm not so sure about that. I think you might be a bit premature with that categorization, given the words and ways in which you term it. Oh, and by the way, We'll go back and forth another 15 minutes. Toto, the boy who cries wolf's son, has been racing. Toto says that he's been leveraging races on the sim to get better results in real world. Listen, let me tell you this. I always argue this with Shez. There is no way, as at the 18th of the 1st, 2025, that anybody's going to tell me that sim racing doesn't help. Now, I know there are people who argue the other side of the friend of the channel, Peter D. Windsor, is not a fan of sim racing unless we're talking about relaxing, getting yourself in a good frame of mind. I've spoken to people who live on the sim dirt chocolate, and they say that you can see in Max Verstappen and George and Charles Leclerc's style on track, their rigour and due diligence that they conduct in the sim. They are always on it. Lando Norris too, that they're exploring different lines. You'll never forget Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, by the way, by dint of what Lando was doing. Monza this year, did you see that inside line, the tight inside line right next to the pit wall that he was taking on the home straight? Where else would you test that? They don't get infinite testing now like they used to back in Michael Schumacher's day. No. Lando Norris would have been using that in iRacing. He would have tested it. Same thing with Max Verstappen. You know what? There's a glorious story about Max Verstappen in I can't even remember where the there's a place on Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps. There's one place that you should never overtake, a la Christian Horner. Oh, if you've ever raced Copse Corner at Silverstone, you should never put a wheel up the inside. Similar to that, there's some, I can't remember the corner, but there's a corner on Spa-Francorchamps. They say you should never, ever overtake. It's far too dangerous. Max Verstappen went on the sim and practiced overtaking on this corner. Super dangerous, but he'd done it on the sim, and under these very specific set of circumstances, shout out taken Liam Lawson, under this very specific set of circumstances, Max Verstappen practiced this overtake on the sim and realised that he could get it done in real life, and then went out and did it, much to the rancor and disenchantment of all of those who manage him. Helmut Marko said, never ever do that again in your life. I'm going to try and find this this overtake. It was on Felipe Nasser. Right, let's find it. Classic overtake rookie. Yeah, Blanchimont. There we go. Done. We got it in the end. So Max Verstappen overtook at Blanchimont. You should never overtake at Blanchimont, but because Max Verstappen spent so long in the bloody sim, which is near as makes no difference, 1-for-1 scale, 1-for-1 as far as feel and handling dynamic now, Max Verstappen realised that you could go and do it, and he went and did it. As techie and difficult and dangerous a manoeuvre that was. And I say all that to say this, I think the relationship isn't quite 1-for-1 between real life and the sim. Not quite, but nearly. And it's getting closer and closer by the day with the advent of AI and the advancement of technology and bloody Murphy's Law, whatever that thing is called. Like, it's just getting, tech is just getting crazier. And so I say all that to say this. Of course, Toto, the boy who cried wolf's son, will be on the sim, leveraging that to get success on the track. There will be no drivers. Right now, there will be no new drivers in F1. As at the first 2025, who won't have touched a lot of sim racing before they get into Formula 1. There is durable competitive advantage. It's like your 11 plus. To get into grammar schools in the UK, some of the best secondary schools from 11 onwards. If you don't train, if you think that you're a genius and you go to sit your 11 plus, when all the other kids are training and getting tuition, then there is durable competitive advantage in that for them. You are disadvantaging yourself. And I would contend, if you want to be an F1 driver and you do one of these, I'm not going in the sim. Well, everybody else is. So how's that going to work out for you? And I say all of that to say this. Lewis Hamilton, historically, I will never forget in 2021, one of my main bugbears as far as Lewis Hamilton's campaign is that in the early phases, Q1, Q2, Q3 of that season, Lewis did one of these. I'm not going in the sim. I'm not interested in the sim. I don't get anything from the sim. My internal gyroscope, I can't exercise my feel in there. And that's true and fair. However, come towards the end of that season, Lewis Hamilton was putting 8 hours in there a day. So if it was good for you then, I would argue it was good for you at the start of the season. But what do I know? What do I know? It's techie. Struggling here, chap. I hope you appreciate what the effort's made. I'm all right, Tiago. I'm just a bit bloody... You can hear me all bunged up, and it doesn't... When you're talking extemporaneously and trying to get your Shakespeare on, it's not helpful. There we go. Madeline versus NASA. Dark Red, they say. Bobby, absolutely. Apparently the car... Excuse me. They keep hinting that the car's going to be a darker Rossa Corsa, which I don't hate. There was a car... The Ferrari car about 3 years ago. Oh my God. The one with the black accents around the floor edge. Oh, I don't know. There was a car that Alain Prost drove that most F1 aficionados say was the sexiest car ever made. I'm not sure that Ferrari car. It was like the 22 car, wasn't it? Mate. The F175 maybe? Oh, poetry. An aesthetic form of poetry in motion, that car is one of my favourite ones. I believe that was the overtake of the year the FIA got. Is a risky overtake, I'm telling you. Very risky. Leneke, he shouldn't have done it. He got chastised for doing it. Never do that again, Helmut Marko said. Because it could have, I mean, if Felipe Nasser's not cooperative, would have been a big car crash. Safak, aka S Yoko. Yeah, Belgium, where he overtook NASA. It's a weird way you put it. It's NASR. I tell you what, if you want to, I was having a conversation with a friend who's new to F1, and I was listening to the way that they pronounce old F1 racing names. You can. I'm telling you, you can tell those who don't deserve to use scissors by the way they pronounce. Let's say a Kamui Kobayashi. Or a Felipe Nasser. Do you know what I mean? It's quite funny, this. I enjoy that. Yeah, no, Safak, it was legendary. Does Lance look in his mirrors at the sit? Oh, my gosh. I could not. I don't know. Daniel says, Safak, yes, we might have a rookie with great performance as well. This 25 season has the makings of a great... Go on and let's talk about this very quickly before I get to these other bits and bobs. 25 will hopefully be amazing, but my crystal ball is as murky as the next person's. It's convergence. It's the final year of a rule and reg set. It will be Max, and again, there's so many... It's the plot lines more than the competition. Max and Aston Martin, which we'll get onto in a minute because exit clauses need to be talked about. What else is it? It's Lewis and Ferrari. It just feels like the racing gods have conspired to give us everything that we need. It's almost like a catch-up accrual of excitement for every F1 fan around the world. What more, if you were writing a goated season, what more things could you, I suppose, Fernando Alonso in a car capable of winning races and therefore championships maybe? But I mean, we're nickel and diming at this point. Do you know what I mean? We've got Lando Norris becoming his internal rancor and an automotive pugilism with his old mate Oscar Jack. Like, what are we doing? Carlos Sainz, the resurgence of in a Williams alongside Alex Albon. Brand new blood in Liam Lawson and I always forget the names. Bloody Antonelli, Behrman, Doohan. Who else is there now? Bartoletto. How are they going to do? 5 rookies on the grid as at the first race. It's chaos. F1 75 years of Formula 1 as well as a celebration. I think the F1 gods are aware of this and it's going to get techie next year. Oh, and by the way, speaking of which, Arvid Lindblad, you know that Red Bull and Helmut Marko are sniffing around this trap, keen to promote him as soon as possible. Opportunity cost of allowing young, hungry, talented, hot prospects their talents to lay to waste. What you can't afford to do if you've got an Arvid Lindblad is let him hang around too long. F1 is a momentum game. Carlos Sainz told you on the New Project podcast that getting to F1 is all about luck and fortuitous circumstance, ticking the boxes within your control, but then the rest is within the hands of the F1 gods. The timing of it, the momentum of it, making sure that you're at your best in feeder formula when indeed there are positions free in the Fs. Makes no sense being Felipe Drogovic and winning F2 when there's no room at the F1 in. Because look at Teo Porchet and Felipe Drugovich now, nowhere to be bloody seen. Felipe Drugovich still a reserve driver at Aston Martin. And how many moons ago now did he win his F2 championship? I want to say it's been 2 cycles now. This makes no sense. There's another pet peeve of mine that I won't bark up that F1 tree today because my emotional bandwidth is far too scarce on the ground. But I say all that to say about Arvin Lindblad, currently going gangbusters at the Oceania Championship. I can't remember the name official. Oceania Formula Regional Championships. Nailing it, getting the super license points on his super license, requisite for him to join Formula One. Isaac Hadjar, do not breathe too deeply. Hold your breath, chap, as if you're in trousers that are far too tight. Because if you drop the ball once, I understand that bad luck last year and software glitch as far as your start in the last race of the year, etc., etc. Everybody says, by all accounts, that dude is a very fast driver. Although, every time, as far as I know, and again, rumour and word on the F1 curb, if that's something in which you want to be invested, everything that I've heard from Red Bull bods who are operating in the big boy team, that every time he's got into a car in FP1, it's been more moaning than action, more underperformance than over. So if indeed he's to stay in that car, now that there are all these Liam Lawsons and Bartolettos in the ether, if indeed Isaac Hadjar harbours aspirations of delivering upon his not insubstantial potential, then he needs to do it in the here and now, because Arvid Lindblad is a coming. He's told you and me and we and Lando Norris, see you in 5 years' time. Have you seen that piece of footage? Bloody Nora. Cocksure any. Brave and confident. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the effervescence of youth. Oh, and by the way, this chap, Daniel Juncadella, Spanish chap, has talked out about Alex Albon being very disparaging. Here's what he's had to say. Again, courtesy of our mates over at Planet F1. Excuse me, I'm struggling. You can hear it, can't you? I'm hindered. I've got a puncture, but we'll make it back to the pit lane, I promise you. Daniel says follows, and he was on a podcast saying all this stuff that I need to go back and listen to properly, because I think some of these comments are a bit techie. Juncadella raced against Alex Albon in the DTM in 2021 when the latter found himself out of F1. So there was in 2021 it was Alex Albon and Liam Lawson competing in the same car. Go and check it out if you don't believe me. The Thai driver was dropped by Red Bull in 2021 after struggling alongside Max Verstappen and having been taken out by Lewis Hamilton twice when he was on the brink of victory and 25 points. But I digress. Later returning to the sport with Williams in 22. Speaking on the Dura La Vita YouTube channel, Juncadella explained that he has a negative image of Alex Albon from racing against him, as he didn't even want to be in DTM with his heart set on an F1 return. Well, you can't hate him for that. If Alex Albon's goal and dream is to be in F1 and he harbours a bit of resentment for not being in there, then what are we doing here? He's human. Like, what do you expect him to love DTM even though that's nowhere near his end goal nor strategic objectives? Is this even a news story? Let me finish it off though. The Spaniard labelled the Williams driver as overrated, and he thinks that Carlos Sainz, his compatriot by the way, another Spaniard, will drive him crazy in 2025. I think, said Daniel, I've always been a little bit more critical of what people in general are with as far as Alex Albon. I raced him in the same year that he raced in DTM, which was a very bad year for him because Liam Lawson destroyed him. Oh, the humanity. He continues, from what I've experienced with Alex Albon and from what I've seen from the outside, I don't like the word overrated, but I've always considered him to be that internally in my head. I've thought, says Daniel, and I think that this year, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Sainz alongside a driver who is going to drive him crazy. A little bit over humanity. Listen, I don't know. What do you guys make of this? Listen, I don't think maybe Alex Albon is a little bit overrated. But that's because he was a Red Bull Junior program driver once, and they rated him highly. Like, there were bright sparks there, right? But I think Alex Albon's Achilles heel as a Formula One driver has always been the C word, right? Consistency. True or false? I think Alex Albon could go well, but Carlos Sainz will definitely be a step up. There will be insecure. Nobody's gonna have, not even Max Verstappen. Let's be honest. Nobody's gonna have Carlos Sainz come and drive alongside them, and there not be a level of insecurity triggered. Not necessarily because Carlos Sainz is quicker than Alex Albon or Max Verstappen or whoever, but because of the level of technical feedback and colour and maturity and strategic nous and race IQ in real time that dude brings to the team. It's just different. You can already see, there's a video up on the Williams YouTube channel. You can already see the way that Carlos interacts with the engineers is a different level from anything that you're going to get from Alex Albon. And with that will come a semblance of insecurity. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm peeling back too many layers at the onion and reading too deep. I don't know. It's techie. Turtle, Vicks Vapor, I know. On your bottom and your yeah. I haven't got any socks on either at the moment, Turtle. Something of which my mom would not be very proud. Little Grey. It really does. Vicks, yeah. Go on, let me read that out again, Turtle. This sounds like an old wives' tale. Rub Vicks on your feet. Bloody Nora. I can't do that. I'll rub Vicks on my chest, though, to try and get me through the bad times. Although, the worst thing is, you know what, chat? I don't want to make this about me and we and us. But if you'd seen me on Monday, I think I did make a video on... Oh, my God. I was dying. I'm out the worst of it now. But no, thank you guys for asking. C word. What's the C word? See you next Tuesday. And no, not see you next Tuesday. I can't use that little grayscale. It's too expletive and colourful. Go on then. Final topic on the docket. I thought that Daniel Juncadella, if I can pronounce with the Spanish, the appropriate Spanish phonetics, all bunged up, etc. The Daniel Juncadella story was quite interesting. But I digress. Look, final topic on the docket. Max Verstappen exit clause. Look, it's Aston Martin. It's a $1 billion deal. It's on the table. Nothing been done officially. Aston Martin have refuted all claims that they're sniffing around one soon to be 5-time champion in Maximilian Verstappen for 2027 potentially. Of course they would. You wouldn't expect them to do anything else. This is like when you put a microphone in front of Lewis Hamilton's face and ask him whether he's going to be at Mercedes for the rest of his life. Of course, in the moment before the Ferrari deal is announced, Lewis Hamilton is going to say, of course I am. Mercedes are my family. I intend to be here for all of my F1 days. And then look what happened. Maximilian Verstappen the same. When he was asked last season, are you going to stay? He was pushed. He had to be asked 3 or 4 times, right? But in the end, ultimately, he came out and said, yes, I will be a Red Bull racing driver through to the end of my contract as at 2028. And that has to mean something, right? But it is the same thing. This is apples and apples. Lewis Hamilton didn't admit to it then, nor will Maximilian Verstappen now. However, there's an article that's resurfaced, and it's not Mail on Sport, because all F1 publications are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. This is the Times, and this is Molly Hudson, motor racing reporter, and she, by all accounts, is a decent one. Therefore, I would argue that you can take this to the bank. She says of Max Verstappen leaving, potentially, although at the time, Max Verstappen was making all the right noises, saying all of the familial stuff about Red Bull, that, yeah, those guys and girls are family. I would like to be a one-team driver throughout my F1 career. Although he was saying that, we will recall that in Unstoppable, the Mark Hughes book, can be getting bunged up more by the second more and more. Bloody struggling. That in the Mark Hughes book, Mark Hughes says this: there have always been performance clauses in Max Verstappen's contract because Jos Verstappen does not want Max Verstappen's career to fall at the same hurdles as his did. An overly competitive Michael Schumacher on the other side of the garage. A poor car that didn't suit his driving style. Because lest we forget, Max Verstappen's dad was a very promising karter even, and a very promising Formula One driver. Every bit as promising as Max Verstappen's was. But it gets techie, doesn't it? Again, the Carlos Sainz thing, that there are a gazillion other factors and variables. If indeed we're having this conversation under the umbrella heading of success in Formula One, there are so many different variables that all need to fall in line right for your F1 career to be a success. Talent is just one of 10 or 20. It's got to be finances, timing, momentum, car, teammate, engineer. Like, it's got to all, do you know what I mean? It's more than just luck, it's fortuitous circumstances et al. The only reason why I say that is to say this: as far as Max Verstappen's career, Jos Verstappen will have always, and did always, institute, in conjunction with Team Verstappen, Raymond Vermeulen, manager of Max Verstappen, clauses in his contract to ensure that if everything went tits up, excuse my turn of phrase, then Max Verstappen could null and void his contracts. You'll be aware already of the Helmut Marko clause. That's now gone. But when it was in there, it's proof positive of my thinking, my thesis. This is Magna Carta, Max Verstappen, is it not? That if Helmut Marko, as his key confidant, key counsel, the man who brought him, was so instrumental in bringing Max Verstappen into Formula One, if indeed this performance clause stated before it was removed, if Helmut Marko left Red Bull, then Max Verstappen could do too, with immediate effect, nulling and voiding his multi-million, 50 million pound contract. That's chaos, isn't it? But again, it's an insight into the mind of Team Verstappen, paranoid about all of these other variables. For success in F1 is a ever-changing dynamic, right? An ever-evolving Rubik's Cube, and Jos Verstappen is critically aware of this, paranoid about it and its ability to affect Max Verstappen's career to the downside. And I say all of that yet again to say this: word on the F1 curb is that there is still a performance clause in Max Verstappen's contract that leads into flexibility in Max Verstappen's favour. Here's what Molly Hudson of The Times said in her article last year. The clause in Verstappen's contract that allowed him to leave if Helmut Marko departed has now been removed. The Times understands, however, that Max Verstappen, 27, still has a clause in his contract that would permit him to leave if the team is outside the top 3 drivers' championship after a significant part of the season. Let me read that again. I feel like I've butchered it. The Times understands that Max Verstappen has a clause in his contract that would permit him to leave the team if he's outside the top 3 in the drivers' standings of the World Drivers' Championship after a significant part of the season. So something else that I've read to be more specific. And again, this is conjecture and speculation always. Word on the F1 curb, if that's something that you can be invested in. After the 3rd race of the year, that Suzuka. If, therefore, let's put some numbers to it. Let's imagine in the hypothetical world, if I were Jos Verstappen, I might institute a clause in the contract that said if Max Verstappen is outside the top 3 in the drivers' standings after the 3rd race at the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka, if that eventuality transpires, then Max Verstappen can null and void his contract with immediate effect. You've heard Jos Verstappen speculate and hypothesize about Max Verstappen's wanting to take a sabbatical at some point in his career on more than one occasion. Team Verstappen don't tell lies per se. They are truth sayers to a fault. Why would Jos Verstappen be talking about sabbaticals if that wasn't something on the horizon? It's getting techie, ladies and gentlemen, the F1 jury. Mama boy lived with his father, potentially. Oh, the humanity indeed, Max. It's going to get techie going into next year. All eyes are on the top 3, the first 3 races. All eyes are on the driver hierarchy at Scuderia Ferrari. Between now and the Monaco Grand Prix, there are so many moving parts. For F1 in 2025, January of is an ever revolving Rubik's Cube for which these drivers and teams and engineers are going to need to solve for. Oh, the humanity.